This is the Chamber Chat Podcast, the show dedicated to chamber professionals to spark ideas and to get actionable tips and strategies to better serve your members and community. Hello, Chamber Champions. Welcome to Chamber Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Burton, and it's my goal here on the podcast to introduce you to people and ideas to better help you serve your chamber members and your community. Our title sponsor for this episode is Bringing Local Back. Remember when your community could turn to a local TV station or newspaper for the latest updates and affordable ads? Those days may be fading, but the need for local connection remains. That's why we created Bringing Local Back, a game-changing platform that restores local visibility and advertising power to your community. It's more than just tech. It's about driving engagement and creating new revenue for your chamber. Ready to see the future? Visit bringinglocalback.com to schedule your demo today. This is the future of local commerce. Our guest for this episode is Clint Nessmith. Clint is the CEO of Resource Development Group and brings over 20 years of fundraising expertise to the table. Throughout his career, he has led successful funding campaigns and advised chambers and economic development organizations of all sizes across the country. Clint's background also includes leadership roles in university advancement and with the Metro Atlanta Chamber's Forward Atlanta campaign. Under his leadership, RDG continues to serve as the only firm in the U.S. solely focused on generating revenue for chambers and economic development groups. Clint lives in Statesboro, Georgia with his wife and 4 children. But Clint, I'm excited to have you with us today here on Chamber Chat Podcast. I'd love to give you the opportunity to say hello to all the chamber champions that are out there listening and to share something interesting about yourself so we can all get to know you a little better.
Thank you, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely.
I would say the most interesting thing that is happening in my life right now is I'm now a grandfather for the first time.
I thought you had an extra big smile. So
yeah, and she's a cutie. My overachieving daughter, who has always done everything early in her life, from graduating from high school early to graduating from college in 3 years to getting married at 21 has they wasted no time, and we now have about a 2-week-old granddaughter, so we're super excited.
That's very exciting. Very cool. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about Resource Development Group. For those who may not be familiar, just give us a little bit of background about what it is you guys do, who you serve, kind of your areas of expertise, if you will.
Perfect. Happy to. So Resource Development Group, as you highlighted earlier, we're very niched, and we're really a boutique firm. We only work with chambers of commerce and economic development organizations to help them raise the money to fund their various programs. This is actually our 30th year of operating. I've been with the company for 22 years. And took over as CEO a little over 3 years ago, and it's been a great transition. We are continuing to carry forth the service offerings that we always have, and we've added a few new ones as well around investor relations support, and also turning our campaign management software that we own and built, providing it with the capabilities to also be used for investor relations tracking, which is something that no CRM does well. And we kept hearing folks talk about that over and over again, and we said we think we can probably do something along those lines. So we're excited that we've been able to add that too. But what's interesting about the company and some of the conversations I have with other chamber executives is we frequently get the question, hey, we don't do economic development.
Yeah.
Like, do you guys ever work with chambers that don't do economic development? And resoundingly, yes, we do. And what's funny is we code a lot of that as economic development within our own company, even if chambers aren't specifically thinking of it that way. But we have over the years certainly supported chambers in raising money for advocacy, livability, talent development, and more housing and homelessness are working their way into the strategies that we are working with.
Yeah. So do you do kind of a one-on-one with these chambers and figure out what their needs are, what it is that they need to raise the funds for, or is there some survey that goes out, or how do you assess the needs of each community?
Yeah. So we always start off uh, basically saying, do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy? Many of our clients will have just gone through a strategic planning process, whether that be internal or using a strategic planning firm like an EY or a TIP or an Amy Holloway. And if they don't have that in hand, then we have to work with them to really develop what their strategic pillars are, highlighting what are we going to be able to do that we can't do today as we move, continue to build on the momentum within the marketplace. And so we will sit down through our feasibility study process with them, work out what are we going to do, and then who are we going to go and test this in front of. We usually will interview somewhere between 30 and 40 leaders from around the county or the region or the state, depending on the area that our clients cover, and we'll actually take that draft strategy out and test it and as we test it, we're not only getting feedback on the strategy, but we're getting feedback on the organization and their recent successes and how well they feel engaged in the work. And of course, we're also getting feedback on a proposed needs-based budget. And then that to fully fund that strategy. And then within that budget conversation, we're testing individual investment amounts, which ultimately allows us to come back and provide a very data-driven feasibility report that covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you guys are problem solvers. You figure out what those problems are in the community based on their strategic plan, and then see what they're not able to currently do with the current setup,
Right.
the current funding, and then find the solutions to overcome that hurdle. So I think that that transitions really well into our topic for today, where we're talking about the importance of being proactive here in 2025. And once you have that strategic plan as you're looking forward, what kind of things do you need to do to keep that momentum going? So we'll dive in much deeper on this topic as soon as we get back from this quick break.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Rose.
And we're the founders of App My Community, a mobile app that can be customized to meet the unique needs of your Chamber of Commerce.
When we started App My Community, we envisioned a tool that would help communities thrive by simplifying communication and enhancing engagement. Chambers of Commerce face unique challenges, and we're here to help you tackle them.
App My Community helps the Evergreen Area Chamber of Commerce to create an app that keeps tourists informed even when their office is closed. They provide 24/7 access to local business information, which helps support the local economy and community engagement.
In Rocky Mountain House, we helped Rocky Chamber create an app with dynamic itineraries and digital resources for tourists, increasing local business engagement. The app has become an essential tool for the community, promoting events and boosting visibility for local merchants.
Today, we empower more than 200 chambers of commerce, campgrounds, and RV resorts to streamline communication, informing members about events, sharing business updates, and providing a digital hub for the community, all in one convenient app.
When you partner with App My Community, our team works closely with you to create an app that meets your chamber's unique needs. As your community grows, our app evolves with you. We are here to ensure you engage effectively with your members and streamline your operations.
Schedule a demo today at appmycommunity.com.
We can't wait to meet you.
Chamber leaders, I know each of you works daily to boost your local economy and take your Chamber of Commerce to the next level. But let's face it, it takes funding, and lots of it. You need to know Resource Development Group. For 3 decades, they have been the premier economic development fundraising consulting firm dedicated to helping chambers of commerce and economic development organizations like yours thrive across the United States. Their expert team specializes in crafting customized fundraising strategies that drive tangible results so you'll be able to fully implement your community advancement and economic development strategies. Imagine having a partner who strives to understand your community's unique needs, brings national best practices to bear, and has the proven experience to secure millions of dollars in funding. Resource Development Group has successfully guided countless chambers of commerce in creating vibrant, sustainable economies. With their comprehensive suite of services, from campaign planning and execution to investor engagement management to best practice studies, RDG takes the guesswork out of fundraising. You'll receive personalized support and innovative solutions that make a real impact. Don't just take my word for it. Chambers of Commerce and EDO executives nationwide have praised RDG for their dedication, professionalism, and impressive track record of raising over $2 billion for their clients. Ready to see what Resource Development Group can do for your chamber? Visit them at rdgfundraising.com to learn more. Elevate your community, strengthen your chamber, and unlock new possibilities with Resource Development Group by your side. They build organizations that build communities. All right, Clint, we're back. As I mentioned before the break, today we're talking about being proactive, especially here in 2025. From your perspective, as you work with chambers and economic development organizations, what does that mean to you to help them be proactive and forward thinking as they manage their organization?
It's always important to be proactive, clearly, and the reason the business community and public sector and foundation community tend to sort of gravitate to chambers and economic development organizations is they do tend to be proactive. They do tend to get things done in a way that can be measured. So you always have to be proactive, but whenever there are economic challenges, you have to that the importance of being proactive really becomes even more of a priority for chambers and EDOs. You highlighted earlier, I've been doing this over 20 years. I have lived through a number of in my career where there was economic uncertainty, whether that be post September 11th, whether that be 2008 and the Great Recession. Most of us, I would imagine most of your listeners have lived through COVID and worked through COVID. Every one of those economic shock that led to economic uncertainty, much like what we're seeing in 2005 with the tariff talks and the changes and the potential impacts that that's having, some positive, some negative, on our respective communities. And what we've seen is being able to be really proactive, be seen as a resource anytime you're in this sort of economic uncertainty. That's incredibly important because all of your members, all of your investors are looking to someone to sort of help them work through the challenge, someone that can provide them with the most up-to-date information, someone that can assist them when they have questions. So, yes, being proactive is always important, but when there is economic uncertainty, that's really where chambers and EDOs can really shine.
Yeah. So it can be really hard to predict when the next, COVID, shutdowns would be, or the next big terrorist attack, or major economic disruptor, right? But as I see it, as a chamber leader, as an economic development organization leader, you're kind of that captain guiding the ship, right? You need to be able to look ahead, have some foresight, and be able to see what are those potential threats to our community. How can we be prepared? And maybe, we hear about rainy day funds and things like that to be able to prepare for the future for those unexpected things. So what does being proactive, how does that translate into these organizations, chambers and EDOs, to be able to take those action steps?
Yeah. So I've had this conversation a lot lately. I think everybody knows that there is a lot of uncertainty for the first half of the year that we've been here in 2025. I can assure you that as you look back in those previous sort of economic shock events, that if a chamber or an EDO is proactive and seen as a resource, anytime you're in a situation like this, you are ultimately going to be rewarded. You need to, it's important to not sort of hide from the challenges that your members are facing. We need to acknowledge that there are stresses and that there is uncertainty. I've had conversations with clients that were trying not to talk about the potential impact of tariffs in their community, which I think is a mistake. I think your members are dealing with that every single day and are trying to work through it. And so acknowledging it is important. And you can do that without being political. I mean, some folks are concerned that, if they sort of weigh in on this, it's going to be seen as political. It doesn't have to be viewed that way. You can simply talk about here's what the impact is going to be on our local employers, and based off the information that we have right now, here's the research that we have. Here's what we are doing to try to be proactive to assist you all in as we go through this process. I like to say, pull that COVID playbook back out. It's very relevant today. Over communicate. Invite the media to reach out to you for comment. Find opportunities to pull your members and investors together to give those updates. Create a toolkit. We've got clients that have created tariff toolkits that is really just loaded with information about the latest and greatest, whatever's coming out of DC. Here's what we know. Supply chain assistance. There's a lot of companies trying to figure out maybe, new supply chains. What can you do from a research standpoint to help your members figure that out? There's a lot there that be valuable, and ultimately, as I said before, chambers and EDOs that are able to be great partners in times like this are going to be rewarded.
Yeah. As you talk about the current situation with tariffs, I'm like, man, this really does rhyme with the whole COVID problems with the supply chains and all the disruption. And I don't know how many people remember the whole Suez Canal incident, that disrupted supply chains. And so being able to figure out these solutions, but also what stood out to me in that explanation was being able to look for potential obstacles that can stand in the way of your community, progress in your community and the business progress, and also the possible solutions, and be proactive in moving forward in having those solutions and not scrambling once those obstacles, rear their ugly heads, but already have a plan in place of, yep, we prepared for this, let's move forward. And those communities are going to be much more healthier on the other end of whatever that challenge is. Are you seeing some examples? As you had mentioned the tariff toolkits, it'd be kind of neat to see what's all included in a tariff toolkit. But what are some other examples you've seen of organizations that are being proactive?
Yeah, it's funny. We are currently working with the Detroit Regional Chamber and their Mish Auto initiative. And Mish Auto is really an association for the automotive mobility industry. We actually did our feasibility study back in the fall before all the tariff conversation really got going. But we've been raising money to fund elevated programs for Mish Auto around advocacy and workforce development for the industry throughout this entire year. And we kind of gut check ourselves all along to say, let's make sure that we're still doing the right thing and we're being appropriately appropriately acknowledging the challenges that the industry is going through right now, and the industry adjacent folks, to the mobility industry. But where we've really consistently leaned in on is we're able to show how Mish Auto is going to bat for the automotive mobility industry, how they're playing offense and defense. And we're having meetings with folks that, in some cases, they've laid off employees, they've closed plants in response to some tariff, but some just continued automotive sort of realignment. But who will also say, we're going to elevate our funding support for Mish Auto because we see it as such an ally, the automotive industry that we're operating in, that without them being there, we know we would not, as an industry, be as well off as we are today. And you look at, granted, it's been a slower campaign because of the impact that the tariffs are having, particularly in the automotive mobility space. But for the commitments that have come in the door, we've seen a 33% increase in funding. Think about all of your listeners out there, what they would do with 33% more revenue. And I'm sure
I can see the excitement.
Right
yeah.
But it just goes to show that even in a challenging time or an uncertain time, you can be successful in raising money if you're seen as a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to mention just whatever, every community is so different. Whatever industries are in the community, the layout of the community, and when you think of these potential obstacles that can affect the businesses within your business community as a chamber and EDO, some of those may be those global type things like tariffs that we're talking about, or a worldwide, virus. And other things can be very localized. Maybe your community is in a flood zone and, it rains hard and it really hurts businesses. So what can you do to be proactive in these different scenarios that affect you either on a very localized and a much more wider scene? And I don't know if there's, the best exercises or approach to really flesh out what those potential threats might be. What have you seen as chambers and EDOs take that step to be proactive? How do they assess what those possible threats might be?
Yeah, well, it's you're doing a strategic plan every 3 to 5 years. There should always be there should always be
SWOT
an element of
analysis,
that.
and
Always. And if possible, setting aside dollars to either proactively address what you think that challenge is going to be, or setting aside dollars in a special, sometimes they're called opportunity fund, that is kind of there waiting to be pulled upon if something unplanned happens. I live in Statesboro, Georgia. We were hit really hard by a hurricane last year. Like nothing I've ever lived through before, as many in the South were.
Yeah.
And those, you think of, kind of thinking ahead of, okay, this may not be a one-off thing. Even if we weren't planning for some sort of response before for something like that, let's make sure that as we think ahead, that our plan is taking into consideration having to maybe live through something like that again. And what would we do? I mean, you look back at, I'm going to go way back. Remember the unfortunate bombing in Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
We worked with the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber for a very long time. And Roy Williams, who of course is retired now, can tell you how the chamber responded after that bombing. And there's definitely playbooks out there. I mean, he'll tell you that they immediately turned the chamber into a place where the media could gather and report from, and were welcoming questions and talking about, well, here's what our local community is doing to work through this unplanned for, unprecedented challenge that we're now facing. And what's interesting is, Oklahoma City was really struggling kind of in the late 80s, early 90s. And while that was a horrific event, the chamber figured out a way to use that to actually be one of the things that sort of elevated that community over the next 25 years.
Yeah.
And so you need to be proactive. You need to be thinking for the future. I will always love opportunity funds. Our client, the Greater Wichita Partnership, right now is setting up an opportunity fund. That's an economic development organization in Wichita. That's the 10-county region. And they're doing it for different reasons. They're doing it because they're one of the fastest growing communities in the country right now. Their economy is on fire, and they are tired of having to take an unplanned fee, have the first step be, we've got to go raise money so we can address this, which of course just slows down your response time. So instead, they're going to set up an opportunity fund so they can immediately take action, because we all know in this world, the quicker you can respond, the more likely it is you're going to end up with a successful conclusion.
Yeah. I love that. The whole idea of the opportunity fund. I mean, any household, it's good to have that savings,
right. Right.
why don't we do that as a business, as an organization? Why don't we have that opportunity fund and teach it and practice it and have it be a normal thing, right?
You got it.
And I think there's even opportunities within the opportunity fund where you can invest. You can do other things with it, where you can see it grow, and it doesn't just sit there, but when that opportunity really comes, you really are prepared.
Exactly. Yeah, I know many of our chambers do have sort of that rainy day fund, or just the reserves that they've built up. You look at the Greater Philadelphia Chamber, which is another client of ours, and they had some real, Philadelphia had some real challenges over the last couple of years. Well, they used some of their rainy day fund to really beef up their local advocacy work. And if they hadn't had that available, it would have been really hard to do what they did. And ultimately, it was a heavy lift, but they were able to do it. And they've had theirs, knowing that they were going to need it at some point. And
yeah, it's great to see. I mean, you hate to have to tap into it and use it, but it's great to see a real example where they had it, they were prepared, they were able to put it to work and solve problems. So that's what it's all about. Well, Clint, I wanted to ask you, for those listening who would like to take their organization up to the next level, what kind of tip or action item might you suggest for them in trying to accomplish that goal?
Great question. It's I'm going to repeat myself at first as I answer this. It's important to have a strategy. Yeah. Even if it's an internal strategy, you have to have a strategy, and you need to make sure that it is refreshed every 3 to 5 years. And in every single one of those strategies, it shouldn't be, how do we keep doing what we're doing? The point of it should be, how do we do what we're doing better? And how do we the new opportunities and challenges that we think we're going to be facing over the next 3 to 5 years? You've got to be constantly looking to get better. And then ultimately, that allows you to go out to your funders, community, governments, foundations, to make a case for increased funding support, or to join your organization potentially for the first time and support you financially. But the key is to communicate, here's what we're going to do, we need to do that we can't do today. And oh, by the way, we're the only ones doing it in our service area. We frequently will do organizational roles charts to very clearly map out what key organizations are doing within an ecosystem, because it gets noisy and your funders get confused. And but being able to show, here's what we are doing uniquely, but also here's how that dovetails into what other key organizations are doing, so that we aren't working in silos. Both of those are incredibly important. But my number one sort of caution this year is, if you are thinking about raising revenue, get on it, because what we've seen the first half of this year is fundraising across the board has become more challenging. A lot of not just in for an economic development space, but just any nonprofit. There's a lot of grants that were out there that have been paused, and a lot of folks are kind of taking it on the chin. Well, I mentioned earlier, there's about a 6 to 9 month sort of delay whenever you have an economic shock before everybody kind of really gets moving again. Well, this fall and this summer, we are seeing and predicting everybody that has ever needed to raise money raising money in a very aggressive way, because they're trying to make up for what they didn't pick up in the first half of the year. So thinking about raising money, and take the steps now to try to get out in front of that wave, stake your claim, your unique value, and begin making some of those major asks. Even if they're not official, you need to at least seed them with those funders that have the likelihood of giving you the most money. And that's what I would suggest.
And to your point, when these challenging times come, we're in the middle of one right now with the tariffs. Certain organizations may feel hesitant to go and ask people to invest, to ask for more money, but these are the times where they really see the value of what your organization does. It's really a time to be able to showcase and say, here's how we support your business to help you grow and help you thrive, help our community be strong. Now, this is what we need from you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as they can see that happening, yes, it may be a strain. It might be hard to have some of those conversations, but if you don't capitalize on that opportunity of showing what you're doing in your community, you're missing a huge opportunity. And to your point earlier, when you talked about at the beginning of our recording, some chambers listening might think, well, I don't do economic development. Yes, you do. And like Clint said, they would code, certain programs of work that you do as economic development. Just because you don't have that economic development contract formally doesn't mean that you're not involved with economic development and own that sector of it. As Clint talked about, having that, that diagram showing the areas of responsibility, show what you own and go after the funding for it.
Mm-hmm. And you made something you just said there, keyed off another thought. If you are worried that you're going to offend somebody by asking them to do more than they're doing now with your organization because of perceived challenges that they may be facing, we always like to remove as many barriers as possible to getting to yes. And one of those is, listen, we've got the strategy. We're being very proactive. Our goal is to see you at this level within the next couple of years. We recognize you may not be able to do anything else beyond what you're doing this calendar year, but let's map out a stair-step plan to get you there in 1 to 2 years. And, you start to get people thinking about, okay, how am I going to do that? That's a great way, though, to grow revenue. And of course, you want to tie it back to that strategy, but it's a great way to recognize we know you may be facing challenges, but here's a way that you can still support us in an elevated way. And people will appreciate that.
And it builds ownership for these companies within the community.
It does.
That's awesome. Well, Clint, as we look to the future of chambers of commerce, I always like to ask all the guests I have on the show, how do you see the future of chambers and their purpose going forward?
That's a great question. You think about how chambers have evolved just since I've been in this industry over 22, 23 years. Chambers today are not what chambers were in 1999 when I worked, or 2000, I guess, when I worked for the Metro Atlanta Chamber. There are so many more areas that we're having to get involved in as an industry. I mentioned homelessness and housing earlier.
Yeah.
Chambers used to never be involved in homelessness.
Childcare too. Yeah.
Childcare, talent development. I mean, there's a lot there, and we're just going to continue to see that. And the reason is that when leaders of your community see these challenges, they're looking for a partner that has proven themselves to get results in the past. And usually where they point back to is a chamber of commerce or an economic development organization. And so that's what's really driving this constant change. You think about the sea of chambers in the future. I think they're going to continue to be just as relevant as they are today, as long as we are helping to solve key community problems. Yeah. Unless I think all of your listeners would recognize that the value of networking, just for networking's sake, is getting weaker and weaker. You have to be part of the solution for driving your community forward. And as long as you're doing that, you're going to be relevant.
I agree. Amen. Preach on. So I wanted to give you a chance to share any contact information for listeners who may want to reach out and connect with you, talk more about how they can be proactive. What would be the best way for someone to reach out and connect?
Great. Yeah, our website is rdgfundraising.com. And my email address is Clint, so CLINT, at rdgfundraising.com. Feel free to reach out.
That's perfect. We'll get it in our show notes and make it nice and easy for people to reach out and connect with you, Clint. But I appreciate you joining us today here on Chamber Chat Podcast, sharing your perspective. These are things that if chambers aren't already thinking about, they should be. I think a lot of them are, but they need that motivative talk to be able to get them back in gear, get them focused, get them, driving towards that destination. So I appreciate you coming and stirring the pot a little bit and making them think. It's a worthwhile conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Brandon.
If you are a chamber professional, please subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. When you subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast, new episodes will show up in your podcast app each week as they are released. If you're finding value in this podcast, please leave us a rating and a review in iTunes. But most importantly, please share Chamber Chat Podcast with your colleagues that are in the industry.